Welcome. I'm Kinetic Symphony. I hunt down and report on mysterious and weird, true stories, from glitches to the paranormal. This is my channel's weekly compendium for the week ending Monday, May 16, 2022. Case file number 619, written by Les Mis, The Mile High Glitch. To set the background, my wife and I were sitting towards the back of the plane on a full flight from Denver to Atlanta last night. We had swapped seats so I could be on the aisle, since I have long legs. About 2 hours into the flight, a stewardess arrives with a drink cart. I asked about their beer selection and asked for the IPA before getting out my phone for contactless payment. This is where things start to get weird. The stewardess sees I have my payment card ready and asks for my name, all while pulling out a device with the seating chart. I say my first name and spell out my last name. She's starting to look very confused and asks me for my name again, so I slowly spell out my last name for her. The stewardess continues to click on her device with a really confused look on her face. At the same time, my wife and I are confused why it would matter if I planned to pay directly. So my wife jumps in and mentions that the two of us had swapped seats. Maybe that was causing the confusion? It's at this point that the stewardess explains that she thinks she may have already charged me. She says that a gentleman further up in the cabin had given her the same name. Well, I have a common first name. I have an extremely rare last name. I've done searches and there are about 50 people in the US with my last name. At that I chuckle and mention how I've never even met someone else with the same last name. But she still looks confused and starts apologizing to me, insisting that she thinks she may have already charged me. To make it even weirder, she then adds that the other guy had also ordered the same IPA and also mentioned something about swapping seats. She apologized again a couple more times, gave me my beer for free, and also gave my wife a free wine for the inconvenience. The whole exchange left us completely befuddled. I even checked my credit card statements this morning to see if this mystery person had somehow put a charge on my card, but nothing showed up at all. Case notes, file number 619. At first I figured this was going to be a time loop glitch for the stewardess, where she had actually taken your order, confused the seats, and then it reset from her perspective, but not on the ordering or device system. But you said your card wasn't charged, so that's odd, and maybe that's not what happened. Similar to how Nicolas Cage's character in Next works. He basically can witness a future that doesn't really happen, but it does in his mind and he remembers it. So a sort of prediction system. I'm guessing as the plane debarked, you tried to find the other couple that evidently had the same name as you, but you couldn't find them. Maybe it was a 1 in a billion coincidence. They weren't doppelgangers or lookalikes, just similar people with similar mannerisms and preferences and names. Frankly though, that strikes me as far less likely than a parallel universe perception glitch. When it comes to parallel universes, there are two types of events. A crossover, where you actually physically go there and usually stay there, or a vision of it, simply seeing it as reality for a moment or two, then hopping back, or rather being pulled back by something. Perhaps this happened for the stewardess. She saw a parallel version with you both in it, virtually identical, took your order there, then eventually her perception returned to the original universe with the real you in it. This would explain her confusion and also how your card wasn't charged. She was certain she did charge it because she did, just not to her you. Case file number 620, written by Blue Fox, 1771. The Quantum Stick. This happened years ago. But I don't talk about it because people usually assume I'm misremembering or making it up. I grew up in a tiny house with a big yard as one of several brothers. One day, my brothers, some friends and I were all hanging out in the yard, roughhousing and being rowdy. 6 of us in total, counting myself. My older brother and I were stick fighting with some old 1 1/4 inch wooden dowels. Now, my older brother had a bad habit of being a bit impulsive, and sometimes had trouble keeping the stick fighting at what you'd typically consider normal play levels of intensity. In this particular instance, he figured if he swung it hard enough, he could knock mine out of my hands and win. I saw him reeling back for a full-on baseball swing. so I winced and put my stick out to block as best as I could and waited for the impact. I heard the whoosh of the swing, but it never landed. He was staring dumbfounded at the stick and then me. It had passed cleanly through my stick and my body without touching either. This was a 5-foot piece of dowel, and he was standing 2 feet away from me. I was dead center in the middle of his swing arc, and there was absolutely no way that he had just missed. Everyone else saw it too. The conversation all immediately stopped as all 6 of us stood frozen, stunned by what we just witnessed or experienced. We all just sort of put the sticks down and wordlessly went inside, not sure how to process this. Over the next few years, it came up in conversation among the people who were there, so I know I'm not just misremembering it. I may have had my eyes closed, but even the most credible of my friends confirmed that he was watching when it happened and has no idea how it happened. He works for a space agency these days and is not the kind of person to make things up. Bonus file, written by Luna Lover. A wish granted. I had always believed in paranormal activity to some extent growing up, ghosts and demons, but I never believed in curses. I always thought you had to be dead to deal with the supernatural. I was abused regularly as a child, and I remember always wanting to know when it would happen next, but I never told anyone. Mostly because I thought they would kill me and wanted to know before. On this particular night, I was locked in the garage. I was so tired since I had to stay up for days, but I was without food, so I did my normal routine and snuck out to find food. I often ate bugs. I know, judge me all you want, but they kept me from being hungry. They were difficult times. When I went to pick up this specific bug to eat it, it bit me instead, so I let it go and went back inside, as I'd already eaten a bit and luckily found a sandwich that was trashed. When I got back in, I remember being instantly tired and laying down on the ground, falling asleep. I was no more than 6, but remember vividly I'd woken up but couldn't move, and a voice spoke to me. It was a simple question. Do you want help? I wasn't sure what it meant, and I couldn't move, but the thing approached me. It stood over me and asked again, do you want help? It asked me if I was hungry and why I wasn't loved. I didn't know. I stayed in this dreamlike state for a while as the creature asked me questions. After a while, I felt myself waking up and it asked me again if I wanted help. It asked me if I wanted to prevent it, so I said yes. When I fully woke up, I was starving, which was odd. After a while, I thought I dreamt it, and when I checked my hand for a bug bite, I didn't have one. So I assumed I just dreamt it up and never actually ate last night. A couple of days went by before I was locked without food again, and went to eat bugs, dig through the trash, etc. After I ate a certain bug, I knew something was wrong. It just didn't taste good, and it had a ton of liquid in it. I ignored it until I finished my dinner and went back inside, then lived my normal life. Suddenly, when things happened, I had déjà vu. I didn't know what it was at the time, but as time flew by, I discovered it, and I'd always think of that dream I had. The abuse never stopped though, not until many years later. There were times I should have died, but I got by just fine somehow. I didn't have to eat bugs much longer though. I was eating leftovers, or my siblings snuck me food. Fast forward. I recently got in a car crash, and right before, for whatever reason, I leaned to the other side of the car and got a huge sense of déjà vu again. I knew exactly how it went. I memorized everything the doctor said to me, the car that hit us, and the food I got after. In the short while I was unconscious, that same figure visited me. He said the deal was made and left. If I hadn't have moved, I would have been blinded by the glass and my leg would have been jammed by the car. Ever since that, I hadn't had any déjà vu and feel like a piece of me is missing. Honestly, I'm not sure what the figure got out of it, but I'm sure that was what saved me. I've wanted to find it again, but I'm not sure it would have left if it hadn't have gotten what it wanted. I've tried looking into it, but I just keep getting that it was just a dream and you had a lucky break, or thank God, but I feel it was something more. Case file number 621, written by Outride 2000. She knew my brand of underwear. So, a few years ago, this girl from college, we'll call M, texted me out of nowhere. Told me she was getting divorced from her husband that she met junior year in college. She and I graduated 15 years ago, approximately. That led us to grabbing a drink and then going back to her place, and we hooked up. After we were both done, she said, just like I remember. I said, what do you mean? She said it was just like even better than when we hooked up in college. I told her we never hooked up in college. We didn't even really hang out, save for a couple of classes we took together. She was offended and started saying, how come I don't remember when we first made out after this guy's party off campus? I told her I remember that party, but that she ended up going back home with the guy that became her husband, and that was mostly the extent of our interaction. She says, no way, and goes on to describe my dorm room in detail, even though I have no recollection of her ever going back there with me. She said she spent a lot of time there our senior year, and invited me to all these parties where we would sometimes hook up after. I was dating someone else my senior year, and knew which party she was talking about, but I never went to them. Every time I suggested she's thinking about someone else, she would describe something extremely specific about me and my life then that nobody would know unless I told them and or one could see. For example, what brand of underwear I used to wear, things I like to do in bed. We followed our memories and they diverged when we first met. I remember thinking she was super hot but wouldn't give me the time of day. She says we hit it off immediately and sat together the rest of the semester. Same class, same professor, same time. I'm pretty sure she must have jumped timelines at some point. Case notes, file number 621. So a parallel universe switcheroo makes the most logical sense here. It's an effect attributable to so many glitches. So much so that it's barely considered a glitch in my mind. No more than an apple falling to the ground is a glitch of gravity. It's just a force of nature, one we haven't studied that well. We just don't have the equations yet to describe how it functions, because replicating it is almost impossible within the same universe. The only surefire way to produce it is death, and sorry, I won't volunteer for that even though I'm confident in this hypothesis. I wonder who died though, you or her? Who was still in their original universe? Another thing I wonder about in quantum immortality, when we die of old age. What happens then? If every other copy of ourselves in every other parallel universe has died, we're the last one, the oldest, and perish from old age, then are we finally truly dead? Does life reset and we're born again as a baby? Reincarnation of sorts? Do we wake up in the real world and select a new character, a new scenario? To be honest, I hope it's the latter. So many possibilities. Case file number 622. Written by Ruby T59. When you're on TV, but you wish you weren't. This happened 2 years ago when I was staying with my sister, brother, and his girlfriend. It happened pretty quickly. My brother, sister, and I were all on the bed watching Rick and Morty on Hulu when the TV turned black. I thought it was a server lag or iffy TV, but after a brief second, I saw myself in the TV. It was almost like the whole TV screen was recording all of us sitting and watching it. After another brief second, it went away, and the show started again. I was surprised and scared at what happened and turned to see their reactions, but they hadn't seen it. I tried to explain what I saw, but after seeing their reactions, I stopped trying. Then it got weirder. A couple weeks later, I was home with my brother's girlfriend and sister. We started talking about something that must have been relevant to what happened, sending shivers down my spine as she told her story. I wanted to crawl away from the exact TV in front of us. She told me that, which later I found out happened 4 days after my incident, that when she was watching a show on Hulu, the screen cut off and she saw herself. She was so shocked and surprised that she didn't think anyone would believe her until I told her it happened to me too. My sister had started getting freaked out about the event and didn't want us to talk about it anymore, and we still don't when she's around. To this day, we debate ideas about what it was and if it really happened. Now that we both have different accounts of the same glitch, I wonder if it's happened to anyone else or if it can be explained. Case file number 623, written by Junior Ad 7061. Floor 9 isn't Floor 9. This happened during Ramadan in 2017, when me and my family went for a vacation in Dubai. My sister chose a hotel for which we would stay in for a couple of weeks, and everything looked decent. I don't really remember the name of the hotel, but it was a 3 to 4 star hotel with good food and amazing service. Now to the story. The city was beautiful, and there was so much to do, but during our stay in Dubai, me and my family were all fasting, and with that, not much could have been explored, but we still made the best out of it. Our second week of the vacation was a casual day of fasting, and breaking the fast was around the evening. My family wanted to go to the city for the night and have fun, but I wanted nothing less than to chill. I'm not a fan of Dubai's heat, and this heat was killing me. Once I left, I got really bored after some time alone in the room, so I left the hotel and wandered around the area, and I really liked the environment. After some time wandering, I went back to the hotel. Once I got to the hotel and greeted the guy behind the reception, I steadily went for the elevator and pressed number 9 to the hotel room. This is where it gets very weird. On the 9th floor, there are 8 hotel rooms and an air freshener on the right side once you get off the elevator, but the air freshener is gone. I thought to myself, okay, they must have taken it away, I guess. As I walked to the room, my keycard wouldn't open, and after several tries I just gave up and looked around to see if I was on the right floor. Everything, and I mean everything, indicated that I was on the 9th floor. Elevator indication was on 9, all hotel rooms on that floor started with 9, and I remember looking at my hotel room and seeing the correct numbers on the door. That's when I realized that it was too quiet. So very quiet that hearing the very fabric of the carpet I was standing on was the only thing making a sound. I picked up my phone, and the last message I received was from my sister saying, "We're at the hotel room half an hour ago," but I had no reception on the phone. I couldn't remember if I once lost reception in the hotel, but it happened just then. At this point, I was very confused and somewhat startled, so I started knocking on the door to the hotel room, but nothing happened. No sound on the other side. No, nothing. I started banging and still nothing happened. I remember our neighbors and how nice they were, so I went for their door to see if someone would answer, and still no one was there. No sound. This is where I panicked. I started banging on every door on the 9th floor and I still couldn't get a response from anyone. At this point, the only thing moving and making a sound was me. I placed my ear on every door. All I could hear was abstinence. I felt so alone and wanted nothing to do but to get back to my family, and then my dumbass thought of the elevator and sprinted my way to it and pressed the ground floor. I made it down and saw the receptionist, and I haven't been so happy to see another human like I was at that moment. I went back to the elevator, but this time I took the one to the right instead of the left like I did before. Press 9. And as soon as I stepped off, I saw the air freshener to the right and my neighbor leaving their hotel room while I was making my way to my door. Before using my door keycard, I heard my family behind that door, and the happiness that struck me was overwhelming to the point that I was about to shed some manly tears. Unlocked it and went straight to bed. If this wasn't a switch of dimensions, I don't know what it was. Bonus file, written by Hold the Choke. We couldn't see our friends anywhere. I went over to a coworker's house after they finished work. A few other people from work were going to meet us there as well. I was the first to arrive by several minutes. The host showed up and both of us went inside. The other coworkers were right behind her. The host and I were there for quite a while when we both were questioning where the others were. That's when her dog started barking at the door. We opened it up and nobody was there. There was nobody in sight. We were confused, but cleaned up for a little bit while we waited. Then sat down and finally looked at our phones. Several missed phone calls and text messages. Apparently, around the time the dog was barking, they were knocking on the door furiously. We verified they went right to the door. They heard the dog barking, but we never heard them knock or ring the doorbell, despite being right next to it. We didn't even see their car when we opened the door. It was so strange, and I can't help but wonder what the hell happened. Case file number 624, written by Leia. I willed myself into another universe. I was renewing our car insurance the other day, and I freaked out when I saw our policy with the wrong number plates on. I called my husband over to have a look, and he said that our number plate has always ended with 342. It hasn't. I'm so certain of this, I will die on this hill. The technique I always used to remember a number plate was that the last 3 digits halved each time. It used to be 421. I vividly remember this. We've had this car for 5 years, and whenever I fill in paperwork that requires a number plate, I remember the halving thing to get it right each time. I am so annoyed and so frustrated by this. My husband thinks I'm insane and has just laughed it off, saying I must be remembering an old car. I'm not. What makes this even weirder, the other day I did a meditation where you chant, "Tomorrow I will wake up in my best timeline." And well, now this happened. I did this meditation not really believing it would work. I don't even know if it has, but I'm extremely scared and creeped out. I haven't noticed anything else changing. Case notes, file number 624. Interesting. This brings up a question I never even thought to ask myself. Would we be able to use our own will to push our sentience into another universe? Could we command the server to abide by our bidding through active thinking, similar to using a command prompt on a computer to dictate what program to use next or perform other functions? Everything I've read so far is that quantum immortality is programmed to trigger when you die, but it's not inconceivable then that the mechanic exists, so maybe we can will it to some extent. Maybe we do it all the time without even realizing. Contingent, of course, on this all being a simulation. In my opinion, that's the most likely scenario going on right now. Some might say that life is a test. Hey, it could be. Maybe we're constantly tested in various scenarios to determine our moral fiber. Or maybe this is some long-term IQ test from the real universe. Maybe we're applying for some job there, and this is the best way they have to test if we're any good. If so, figuring out that there's a multiverse out there and that we can switch between it on a whim, maybe that's part of the test. I can imagine it now in the real world. When you discovered this feature, an achievement pop-up was unlocked. You've discovered the multiverse. Congrats. Case file number 625, written by Iravi Kutan Pillai. The records no longer exist? It all feels very strange, and I'm seriously doubting my own consciousness. I am an Indian working in Saudi Arabia for the last 9 years, and haven't been able to take a vacation for the last 4 years, working continuously, because of the virus restrictions more recently. When I reached India last week after a long journey, I called my friends to meet at our usual fast food joint. We were talking about so many things. I was trying to catch up with what's happening around our locality. Then I proceeded to ask them about a new football turf I saw on the way and suggested we should play there sometime. My friends agreed to that, with a puzzled expression. I started to ask them about our local football club. Are they still using the orange jersey like they used to? Who is still playing in the team? Which tournament did we play last? They did answer all these questions, but at the end they asked me why I'm talking about football. I laughed at them and said because we love football, and I, along with another one of our friends, were the only local boys who used to play for the club when they participated in big tournaments. Then I reminded them how big the celebrations for the 2010 Football World Cup were in our village. They looked at each other, laughed at me, and said I've gone mad. I kept telling them about some tournaments and how I'm certain other players performed, and some other specific examples. Their reaction was the same as before. According to them, I was never into football, and I have never even been an average player. And some of the incidents I mentioned did really happen, but I was never a part of it. Now I'm pissed and confused at the same time. I know I was a good player. I know I played for that club, but these bastards keep telling me I wasn't. But there's one other thing. I know I played for my college team, and there's one guy from my place who was in my senior year in college. He must have known about me or at least seen me playing for the college team. So I asked my friend to call this guy to arrange a meeting to discuss football with me. He answered the phone, and like all my other friends, he said he had never seen me play football. But I have something else to prove my point. Photos. I uploaded some of the college team photos from the past when we won a tournament. I proceeded to open my Facebook and scroll through the photos. Scrolling down and down and down, there's no freaking photo. I clearly remember the photos with our real Madrid jersey, but it wasn't there. We decided to end this conversation there and I left for home. I was confused, but didn't talk to anybody about this. The next morning, I got a call from our courier services for the package I had sent from Saudi Arabia. Then I remembered something. I had sent my football shoes in that package. I used to play near my company camp with the same shoe. I received the package, took it home, opened it, and what the hell? There are no football shoes in there. Now I'm seriously pissed and called my company, and they said they have never seen me playing football. Called my college friends, they never saw me playing football. Asked my family, same answer. I am pretty damn sure what I think about me is real. I know it's only been a week, but I think everybody around me has gone through some eternal sunshine crap and their mind got erased or something. Or I'm in deep trouble and need help. My mother gave me a bunch of dresses which, according to her, I left here when I went back to Saudi Arabia 4 years ago. Guess what? I have no recollection of owning that bunch of dresses. It somewhat fits me given it's 4 years old, and as far as I remember, I use ready-made shirts. All the shirts she has given me are tailor-made, which is very unlike me. I went to the turf with my friends. There were a bunch of guys warming up to play. Some of them I knew before. Had a little chat and joined them and demolished the game. I was seriously doubting myself before, but not anymore. My skills are undeniable. I know who I am, and I know what I'm saying is true. The frustrating part is that my friends who were there with me said that I must have been playing with some Saudi guys for the past 4 years to be this good now. They still don't believe me. Lots of people recommended that I consult a doctor, which made me remember one incident that happened while I was on the college team. It was a training session, and I fell down while controlling the ball. The guy next to me tried to clear the ball, but he missed it and kicked me in the ribs. I shrugged it off and kept playing. After the session, we were changing to leave. I felt a pain in my ribs and I called my trainer. He called an ambulance and I was admitted to the hospital. They were doing some tests. Don't remember the names, but it had the clip-like thing attached to my finger. I was fine, but they wanted me to be in observation for 24 hours. I remember my father and uncle being there after I informed them. I remember my college friends being there on the next day. Sadly, as I expected, when I asked, nobody remembered anything. Went to the hospital to check the records. No records exist. Case file number 626, written by Spaced Out Dreamer Boy, the air-conditioned crowbar. So we have this little metal tool that we use to unlock any of the doors in our house if they have been accidentally locked from the inside. The only way I can describe it is that it looks like a tiny crowbar, hook at one end, flat head at the other. We've been keeping this tool in the cabinet area above our air conditioner. Well, around 2 months back, I had accidentally shut my bathroom door with the lock engaged. I went to grab the tool to unlock the door like always, and it was gone. I checked all around the cabinet and the floor, but it was nowhere. Even checked the tops of the door frames where it used to be, but nope, tool just disappeared. None of us really thought anything of it. Things got lost all the time, and we eventually found another tool that looked different from the original to replace it. Well, today, around 2 hours ago, my mom had opened that air conditioner cabinet for something, and lo and behold, there was the original tool in its original place. She was so confused. I laughed about it, telling her that it was a glitch in the Matrix. She's not really a believer of things like glitches, but I'm a big fan of glitch stories, so knowing she experienced a glitch along with me was amusing, and here we are. Case file number 627, written by Multi Frasper, When the Dark Sky Holds a Concert. This was captured during a cold night on the 24th of January, 2020, at around 10:30 p.m. I was doing my mandatory military service in the Finnish Defense Forces as military police, and during the time I captured this clip, I kept watch at one of the checkpoints that leads to the military base or garrison, whatever you call it. The clip is captured with the phone I had back then, a Huawei P20 Pro, and I recorded it to Snapchat in order to send it to my buddies so they could go out and listen to the sound too. The sounds continued for approximately 45 minutes to approximately 11:15 p.m. When the sounds start to vanish, it felt like it was getting quieter with each noise it made. It wasn't sudden, unlike when it started. I don't really know when it did start, because I was inside our security booth, but when I heard it, I rushed outside to check it out and listen. My pal was with me and noticed it too. After the noises ended, I didn't hear them again. I remember someone telling me they heard the same noises exactly the day before, around midnight. I wasn't there then to witness it, unfortunately. About the area of the incident, the base itself was quiet back then because the time was close to midnight and there wouldn't be any action at that time, and if there were, then we'd most certainly know about it, no doubt. There is, however, a town or city you could almost say, close by, approximately 1.5 kilometers away. The city is technically a ghost town around this time, and even during rush hour, it's really nothing special. Very quiet and kinda eerie place, I'd call it. There is a central fire station nearby, but that's unlikely the source of the sound. Also, some rural industries are located nearby, but again, those are most likely not very active around that time, midnight. If I had to guess where the source of this is coming from, it'd be the big water tower located just across the road from the base. It's mostly made up of concrete. It hasn't been making any noise before though, and during the time I filmed this, it wasn't that windy at all. But maybe someone knows more about water towers than I do? Also worth mentioning is that a one-track railroad is located quite close. But as far as I know, no cargo is transported on this, only during specific times. A rural rail bus line will be driving here, and it certainly wouldn't make this noise. A small bay is located on the other side of the base, but only small motor and sailboats are able to operate in these waters, and during this time of the year, I don't think anyone would be riding there in pitch black darkness. No attempt could be made to debunk it simply because I couldn't leave my post and it was extremely hard to locate the sound. It did sound like it was coming from the woods, but that's a risky bet to make. A lot was spoken about the incident the next day, but it was a mystery that never, as far as I know, returned. I'm not serving in the military anymore because I was moved to the reserves, but it'd be fun to know if those people serving there now have been hearing stuff like this. Who knows? Case notes, file number 627. I listened to this clip. Creepy is the first word that comes to mind. Then, unsettling. The best way I'd personally describe it is as a sort of muffled, distorted train horn. But train horns are far louder and persist for longer. Actually, it sounds a little similar, but also more quiet than the sky trumpets that you hear about. There's no real explanation for those either. The only mundane explanation I could go with would be some type of glitched out train passing by. Although as you say, freight trains didn't travel on that rail line, unless there was some type of rare exception. Which, if that is the case, it could explain why it was never heard again. But it wouldn't explain why the sound is so diffused if the rail is close by. There's a rail line 2 kilometers away from me, and whenever freight passes through, it's so loud I can feel my house walls vibrate slightly. All these sound glitches fascinate me. The hum, or sky trumpets, or this, because everyone hears it, or most people are able to hear it. Sometimes some people aren't, and it's usually not a high-pitched sound, so it's not related to old age. I think for the hum, they've even been able to measure it instrumentally, but some people still can't hear it. And they've never been able to determine where it's coming from. Bonus file, written by D615, The Vintage Dress. Long story short, my mom passed away recently in my home country. My notoriously hard to shop for sister, also in my home country, went to a modern department store to buy mourning wear. A fellow customer, just like a younger version of my mom, overheard her talking to the saleswoman and immediately stepped in and found her a blouse in her size, the kind my mom used to buy for her 35 years ago on overseas trips. Few key points. The department store is recently built and very contemporary. They do not have any vintage stock, the way Neiman M or Nordstrom don't have forgotten items from the 80s and 90s hiding out in the racks. This is a vibrant, exclusive store with quick turnarounds and lots of employees. The cream and white tops looked pristine. The department store is a standalone, not a part of a chain or revamped old business. In my home country, vintage is stigmatized. An upscale department store wouldn't want to besmirch their reputation by selling vintage items, even allowing for the very minuscule probability that this was some decades-old leftover stock from a supplier. They fit my sister perfectly. The fellow customer had just reached out into the racks and pulled them out, only knowing the color, but no other specifications. After the funeral, I went to the store and met a floor manager, in the hopes of buying more items like this for my sister. This was a week after my sister was there. He called up at least 5 sales personnel from the floor. No one could remember having these items. The department store has multiples of pretty much everything in different colors and sizes. Because these are the types of blouses she likes, my sister is always actively on the hunt for them. She's been unsuccessful for 30 plus years. If it's some kind of resurgence trend, there will be plenty of other similar items. When I visited the store with my sister, she insisted we could leave out the back entrance. I argued with her that the security won't let customers exit through the back. I was right, it's narrow and very heavily guarded. My sister was quite certain it was possible because a lady who selected the tops for her had disappeared out through the back. When handing the items to my sister, the lady had said something verbatim my mom always told my sister when getting dressed for a special event. It's like a young version of my mom chose her dress. Bonus file, written by Lemonade Robot, a proper game of Nerf dart. Last October, my friend Tanner died unexpectedly due to causes that can't be mentioned in the sub's rules. I don't need to go into too many details because they're not relevant to the story, but it was easily one of the hardest hitting losses I've ever had. He and I shared a very close and special bond and overcame a lot in life together. He had moved in with our mutual friend, Beth, and her boyfriend several months prior to passing away, so I would constantly come over to hang out with everyone as I lived nearby. One summer day, we all had a giant Nerf gun fight together in their front yard. I distinctly remember making eye contact with Tanner and having a strange gut feeling at the time that this was a bittersweet moment, but brushed it off as being sad that summer was coming to a close. I felt uneasy though, that he had the same sad, longing look in his eyes that I did. It began to get dark out. After collecting as many darts as we could, we headed inside as Tanner declared, "This isn't over yet." A month later, after noticing many strange behaviors, Beth and her boyfriend made the heavy decision to call Tanner's mom and have her convince him to go back to rehab. 3 months later, Tanner was dead. I moved out of state since, but always go back to visit Beth when I'm home. One day after heavy snowfall, I pulled into Beth's driveway. Just as I hopped out of my car, Beth came to the door to greet me. Something yellow popped out against the fresh snowfall, immediately catching both of our attention. We looked down and directly on our front step, perfectly placed in the untouched snow, was a Nerf dart. Well played, buddy. Well played.